I thought this game was going to have mature content. Oh well. In any case, sorry for the brief absence last week as I was kinda ill. But let's get right back into the swing of things with today's Ancient DOS game, Alien Breed, which is, I think the best way to sum this one up is perfectly average. Really, I'm going to be stretchy to make an interesting episode here because so much of what this game has is just very basic and easy to explain. Although there are a handful of things I should be able to elaborate at least a little on. But one thing I can say though is that this isn't a game which evens out to average by having great content mixed with poor designs or anything like that. This is a game where pretty much every aspect of it is just middle of the road in terms of quality. Controls, average. Music, average. Graphics, average. Content, average. Design, average. There's so little that stands out, either good or bad, that it's easy to see why I never heard of this one growing up, and only more recently found out about it. I will also say that I wasn't able to see the game through to the end because I got really bored of it after a while. Partly because there's no decent way to save your progress, and while there is a password feature, you always have to type it in manually every time you want to continue. And then you don't get any of your stuff back when you do. Not that it makes a big deal, you'll find out what I mean soon enough. Alien Breed was created by Team 17, the same guys who made the Worms series of games. But since this was one of their first games, as well as one of their first DOS ports, seeing as they primarily did Amiga games when they got started, they didn't have an easy time getting any recognition for this one. Not helped by the publisher, MicroLeague Interactive, being relatively unknown, only having a handful of titles under their belt by this point, most of them being sports titles. In any case, the Amiga original was released in 1991, while the DOS port was released in 1993, and it's a 1 to 2 player action game. This graphics support's kind of odd, as it runs on a hacked VGA 320 by 196 256 color video mode. Now, seeing that other games like Jazz Jackrabbit did this to prevent CRT monitors from stretching the vertical aspect to fill the screen, this resolution choice was likely done for similar reasons, and while I can't confirm this to be the case, the fact that the box art for the game shows screenshots with a 1-to-1 pixel aspect ratio strongly suggests this theory is correct. As for audio, it sports the PC speaker, AdLib, Roland MT32, and Sound Blaster sound cards. As for its current release date, it's still commercial, and if you want to grab the game as simply as possible, just head over to the Good Old Games website at www.gog.com, where you can pick it up, along with its sequel, together for $6. As for physical copies, they're pretty rare and hard to come by, but due to low demand, they're not too expensive either, with fully boxed copies going for between $20 and $30. If you do want a physical copy for sake of collecting, remember that there's both an Amiga and DOS version out there, plus the game uses code lookup based copy protection, so you want to be sure to get the code list as well. There is a story to this game, but I'm skipping on it because it's a whole lot of nothing. Mostly just dropping in the names of things and saying that you're part of some mercenary group known as the Interplanetary Corps, who've gone to an Intex research center to try and discover what's gone wrong there. I will say though that I find the name choice ironic. You see, there's a real company out there by the name of Intex. However, unlike the Intex in this game, which conducts secretive research on space technology, the real-life Intex makes outdoor pools and inflatable toys. Go figure. The gameplay is otherwise very straightforward. You move around and you shoot. The controls are really basic in that regards. In fact, a little too basic. A fundamental thing with games like this is being able to strafe, so that you can attack things without having to walk straight towards them, since, let's face it, walking towards something trying to kill you, probably a really dumb idea in most circumstances. However, there's absolutely no way to strafe in this game. This unfortunately boils a lot of combat down to luck, as there's sometimes simply not enough time to lay down enough fire to deal with an alien the instant you see it, as it may just bolt right for you at extremely high speed. Fortunately, the aliens will die if they touch you, so that does help out at least a little. Another thing which is kind of odd about the aliens, though, is the spawning mechanics. See, it's common for games to have off-screen spawning of enemies, but this is probably one of the extremely few games I know of where off-screen enemies can also despawn, and it seems to be completely random when aliens will spawn in or spawn out. There are special holes which can show up starting from the second level onwards though, which can spawn aliens even when on screen, so be sure to watch out for those. Unfortunately, the game is very generous with ammunition, and while the ammo bar doesn't look particularly big, it actually lasts for quite a number of shots, and each ammo pickup you find is worth a whole new bar. Actually, that's another thing I should point out, is that the status bars look like they have certain limits, but in fact, they don't. You can carry more keys, lives, and ammo packs than the status bars lead you to believe. Though I will admit, I don't know if there actually is a limit or not beyond what the status bars are capable of showing. The one thing the game is not generous with is extra lives and health power-ups. So you have to be very careful to avoid taking as much damage as possible, especially since a health refill only costs 5,000 credits to purchase, compared to the 30,000 credit cost for an extra life. Now, you can also buy ammo and key packs if you need them, but chances are you won't, as these things are found in pretty large quantities. Plus, if you have to get through a door but you don't have a key for it, you can just shoot it a bunch and it'll eventually open anyways. To make purchases, you have to find an Intex computer terminal. There's always at least one of these on every floor of the research center, sometimes more. These terminals not only allow you to purchase equipment, but you can also buy new weapons, see a rudimentary map of the area, and check your other stats. You also use these terminals for entering passwords to continue play from later parts of the game, which is kind of done in a very unusual way, which I really need to explain. You see, between each floor of the research center, you get a password, all well and good. However, there's nowhere to actually enter this password. Not in the main menu, not in the game itself. What you do to enter the password is start a new game, find an Intex computer terminal, get to the terminal's main menu, then just type in the password. I mean, no, it doesn't look like this should work, and there's zero feedback to let you know that you're even doing it right, but trust me, this is what you gotta do. And then when you're done typing the password in, you simply close the terminal, and if you entered it correctly, you'll be immediately transported to the start of the floor the password was for. Now, what's interesting about this password system, though, is that you can exploit it to a degree. See, you don't get any of your stuff back when you use a password, but you keep whatever stuff you had from when you entered the password. So you can spend some time gearing up on the first floor, which is relatively easy to do, then enter the password and be better equipped for whatever floor you left off on. So for as odd as the password system is, at least it has some quirks you can take advantage of if you really want to. There's some other odd quirks of how the game works as well. For instance, still talking about the computer terminals, when you go to buy a weapon, it'll show you one and ask you if you want to buy it or not. Now if you hit yes, you'll have that weapon. If you hit no, it goes back to the main menu. But you can actually buy any of the weapons in the game at any point, provided you have the money. All you do is cycle the weapon selection left or right. The reason this is odd is because you do this while the game is asking you if you want to buy the weapon or not. I guess this kind of streamlines it in a way, but it's still unusual compared to how in virtually any other game, you'd select the weapon first, then confirm if you wanted to buy it or not select the weapon while confirming. There's actually quite a few additional weapons you can get, and while some of them do have some minor special effects, they really just all boil down to simply providing enhanced damage for each unit of ammo consumed. Now you do have a button to cycle your weapons if you really want to, but there's pretty much no reason to ever do this. I should also point out that being able to shoot doors open is actually based on a random chance slightly, as some doors will shoot open much more easily than others, but the damage caused by a weapon does seem to be a factor, so the better weapons will shoot doors open more easily. The last thing to mention is that each floor has a mission objective that you need to complete to be allowed to move on to the next floor. If you haven't completed the objective, the elevator to the next floor won't function. Now sometimes the objective is simply to look around, in which case it's technically already completed and you can just take the lift down once you find it. Other times though, you'll need to destroy stuff, and may sometimes be hit with a countdown to escape. Now, if you do get faced with a countdown, then you absolutely need to hightail it out of there, as the countdown goes very quick, and if you run out of time, it's an instant game over, no matter how many extra lives you have left. I should also point out, this technically leads into some dick moves by the devs, but they only count as dick moves if you don't know in advance that they're going to happen. The game's pretty short, so memorizing where all the tricky parts are isn't exactly hard. One in particular is with the third floor, where you have to close 4 blast doors to prevent all the destruction going on from spilling down into the rest of the station. Though once you've closed 3 of the 4 blast doors, the countdown begins, which means if you're nowhere near both the last blast door and the elevator, you're screwed. Basically, you want to close the 2 on the left side of the map first, as the 2 on the right side will be the closest to the elevator and easiest to get between relatively quickly. Yeah, there's seriously not a lot to this thing. There's no major variations on the alien designs, no major variations on the graphics or level design. And yeah, the music is just basic ambient stuff, which barely qualifies as music, as it's mostly just sound cues. There's nothing particularly wrong with this game, nothing major anyways, but there's no standout features which make it worth playing either. So I would say this is a game to pick up, particularly if you enjoy overhead 2D shooters, because if not, then you're probably better off saving your money for something else. You need to set a fixed cycles count while playing this game, otherwise the game will likely run way too fast or too slow. I found a setting of 6,000 cycles to be optimal, though if you want the gameplay to be even slower, you can turn the cycles down even more. The game's joystick support also works without any extra configuration and is absolutely necessary if you want to play 2-player co-op, as the game does not allow 2 people to use the keyboard simultaneously. Though I guess you could always jury-rig DOSBox's keymapper to do 2 players on the keyboard if you really wanted to. Anywho, that's all for today's episode of Ancient DOS Games. Because I missed the first week of the month due to being sick, we're going to be changing up the schedule slightly, so there'll be new ADG videos on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Saturdays of this month, March, and April. Once we get to May, we'll go back to the usual 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Saturday schedule. In any case, episode 205 will be next week on Saturday the 18th, and we'll be taking a look at one of the earliest golf games I know of that included an editor. Now, if you think you know of a game that might be that way, then be sure to send your guess to adg@pixelships.com, and stay tuned because yes, even old 80s games had editors. Yeah, 80s games are more likely to have official editors than 90s games.
Game over.
Thanks for watching, everyone, and special thanks to those of you supporting me on Patreon. Here's just a small sample of you guys.